There's only one way, I think, to depict the Odyssey and the Iliad on film. We've seen this done many times. We have a new one coming out, The Odyssey by Christopher Nolan, this year in a few days. We had Troy a couple decades ago. There's The Odyssey that was done in a wonderful TV movie in 1997, but I think all of these will just fail, or they already have failed. I don't think any of them have done sufficient justice to either of the epics. But there is a way to do this on film, and that way, I think, is via anime.
NANI?!
Hear me out. Think of some of the really great and famous anime movies. You got Akira, and you have all the Ghibli movies. All these fantastic films are really interesting, and they have two things in common, I think, almost every one of them. The first is that they show things in such a realistic detail, almost like they're live-action films, but of course they're hyper-realistic even in those scenes of, just see a cottage in the woods, and, looks very, very plain, and there's this slowness to it. So when the weird stuff happens, it's quite heightened, and it feels really weird. And the Iliad and the Odyssey are filled with weird stuff, and a lot of supernatural stuff. And in the animated format, you can do things that are supernatural in such a way that it doesn't look silly. A lesson that I think Disney is finally learning.
You're welcome.
While the movie Troy is a well-liked film, they set out to have nothing supernatural in it, as if it were a sort of realistic portrayal of the Trojan War, or the parts of the Trojan War that are in the mythological epic. But it's just so silly because 60% of the characters are gods, and the supernatural influence is constantly there, including actual gods fighting people on the battlefield and turning the tide of the war one way or the other, or the fate of certain characters. Would it have succeeded in portraying the Iliad better if it had the supernatural stuff in it? Well, the problem is with the live action, and I want to give you a few examples from the actual text of why the Odyssey and the Iliad really deserve to be made into not just anime films, but anime television series. But first, I want to tell you how you can actually learn the ancient Greek language, and that is with this video sponsor, the Ancient Language Institute. At Ancient Language Institute, our goal is to guide you into acquiring a mental representation of the target language, such that, in the case of Greek, you can understand the Homeric epics from the perspective of someone from the classical or Koine period. You're going to be able to read those works as well with fluency, because we want you to be able to interact in the classroom and with your texts, thinking in the language, using the language, speaking in the language. And you'll be able to do that from day one in new cohorts starting this fall for Ancient Greek and Latin and Old English and Biblical Hebrew. And that starts at the end of August, but you have to sign up by August 15th in order to be a part of the new autumn cohorts. Speaking and listening, as well as reading, are so fundamental, and that's why you should also sign up for the Echo app. The Old English audiobooks there are done by Colin Gorey, and the Ancient Greek by yours truly. Hours of audio of great works from Lucian to Plato to the New Testament. You can find out more about the Echo app at the link below, and also to see the courses that Ancient Language Institute is offering this autumn. At the end of the video, I'm going to give you the plan for how to render the Odyssey and the Iliad in the anime format in the best way possible. So watch the whole video, because you're not going to want to miss that part. Or, of course, if you're one of those big anime producers or connections in that world, you can skip right to that part and find out how to do it, so you can do it that way. And then come back and watch the rest of the video. You can find the chapters below in the description. And the reason that anime occurred to me as one of the best ways to depict these things was actually thanks to a Spanish YouTube channel called Destripando la Historia, which is just phenomenal. You should all check out their videos, because they turn the mythological stories into music videos, and in about 2 or 3 minutes they give you all the major important points of the stories of these gods and other mythological figures. The music is modern, and the visual style is basically anime. And the kind of anime visual style is that entertaining mix that is often used in comedies, in anime comedies. So there's a lot of hyper-realistic things, and the characters change their shape and appearance and all sorts of ways that work in that more than hyper-realistic comical style. It's worth mentioning at this juncture that I don't actually know anime very well. I've seen a few of the very important films, a lot of the Ghibli movies, a few anime TV series like Sword Art Online, and which one with Laito? Death Note. So I've seen a few of those, especially when I was living in Japan, and that helped me learn Japanese. But otherwise, I'm not, like I don't think I've watched something anime in a long time. But the kind of anime style I'm thinking of is not the more comical style, not the type that they use in Destripando la Historia, although they do a really good job of it, and it's just perfect for depicting the weirdness and, in fact, the silliness that is inevitable in a lot of the mythological stories. But I'm really thinking of the more, we'll call it, I don't know what these are called, but these higher level, more serious anime styles. Again, Akira for sure, but any of the Ghibli films. I say that because it's spelled Ghi, and it looks like Ghibli, which is how I would pronounce it as an Italian speaker. But apparently it's supposed to be Ghibli, and that's why he put the H in there, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, so Ghibli, I'll just call it both. Ghibli. Like I was saying before, they're able to really depict the realism, the beautiful realism of a scene, the way I feel like when I'm at my home and I see how beautiful the light is coming through the trees, just looking there from one, just standing, it's just a beautiful looking place to be. Like they have a lot of that. So that kind of stuff can really come through, and as good as there could be a director or a filmmaker to make you feel that with a real setting, anime can do that even better and work so well for the heightened, beautiful descriptions that are in Homer. And not only beautiful descriptions, but brutal descriptions. The Iliad is probably the goriest thing I've ever read. And also, for the record, I've enjoyed listening to the Iliad read to me via audiobook, the same with the Odyssey. I strongly recommend that. That is by far the best way to get close to the original experience, having the epics read to you. So if you can, absolutely, if you read them with your eyes, please read aloud. Even, obviously, in translation, it's fine. To actually learn ancient Greek. Ancient Language Institute, we mentioned that before. But nevertheless, it is an acoustic experience. You're supposed to be enjoying being told the story. If you can, I definitely recommend that. But anime, especially serious anime, which contains gory scenes, I'm not into that. I don't actually like that. But that's what the Iliad is. A lot of it is just these brutal descriptions. Here, hold on. Let me find an example. I have the perfect example of this, and this is from Iliad, Book 5, around line 425. There is the rampage of Diomedes, one of the greatest and most brutal soldiers of the Achaeans, of the Greeks. Right before this, one of the Trojans and Diomedes were talking crap to one another. And in any case, he said to Diomedes, "Give me your best shot." And Diomedes said that, "Well, I am going to give you my best shot." So spake he and hurled, and Athene guided the spear upon his nose beside the eye, and pierced through his white teeth. So the stubborn bronze shore off his tongue at its root. Ooh. And the spear point came out at the base of the chin. Then he fell out of the car, and his armor all bright and flashing clanged upon him. And the swift-footed horses swerved aside, and there his spirit and his strength were undone. That's pretty brutal, right? It doesn't end there, though. So Aeneas, Aeneas, founder of Rome eventually. Well, he's got stuff to do. We know, of course, he is the son of Aphrodite, right? The son of Venus. Well, he sees this, and being a Trojan and seeing his fellow Trojan fall, he comes to try to protect his friend, his fellow comrade. And here it says, eager to slay the man whosoever should come seize the corpse. She was protecting it and crying a terrible cry. This is so anime, isn't it? But the son of Tydeus, this is Diomedes, grasped in his hand a stone, like a boulder, a mighty deed, one that not two men could bear. Yeah, it's a really big one. Such as mortals now are. Yet lightly did he wield it even alone. Therewith he smote Aeneas on the hip, where the thigh turns in the hip joint, the cup men call it, and crushed the cup bone, and broke furthermore both sinews, and the jagged stone tore the skin away. We can only imagine that Aeneas will get the best physical therapy that Troy can offer, so that when Troy is being sacked by the Achaeans later, he can carry his father Anchises on his shoulder like it's nothing. So you need to have a hip joint to be able to carry your father. Then the warrior fell, this is Aeneas falling, upon his knees, and thus abode, with his stout hand leaned upon the earth, and dark night enfolded his eyes. This is so anime, isn't it? And now would the king of men, Aeneas, have perished had not the daughter of Zeus, Aphrodite, been quick to mark, even his mother that conceived him to Anchises as he tended his kine. So Aphrodite, Venus, sees him, is like, ah, my son. So what is she going to do? About her dear son she flung her white arms, and before him she spread a fold of her bright garment to be a shelter against missiles, lest any of the Danaans with swift horses might hurl a spear of bronze into his breast and take away his life. So, how do you make that work in live action? I mean, this explains why they didn't even bother involving the gods in a movie like Troy. The movie Troy is disappointing to me because we don't have the gods in them, and the gods are like 60% of the characters in the story in the Iliad. So it's very weird and hollow to see that movie if you know what's going on in the Homeric epic. So this is, where does Aphrodite come from? How would you depict that cinematically if you have something like the medium of animation? And I think anime is excellent for this. You imagine Aphrodite kind of manifesting into the visible, and then she is able to throw a really thin garment that is magically able to defeat these missiles, defeat arrows and other things that are getting thrown at her son. So she does that, but then Diomedes isn't like that. So she tries to get Aeneas away. So imagine that Aphrodite, who has the strength and whatever, she's taking on physical form temporarily, I guess, to be able to do this and be able to help carry Aeneas away. And Diomedes, though, he wants to finish off Aeneas. So when he had come upon Aphrodite, and he pursued her through the great throng, then the son of great-souled Tydeus, Diomedes being, thrust with his sharp spear and leapt upon her, and wounded the surface of her delicate hand, and forthwith through the ambrosial raiment that the Graces themselves had wrought for her, the spear pierced the flesh upon the wrist above the palm, and forth flowed the immortal blood of the goddess, the ichor, such as floweth in the blessed gods. So, apparently the gods can be wounded? She's visible. She's not only taken on, like, she's kind of there in a magical way, or a mystical, supernatural way, right? But she's actually there so much in a physical form that she can be wounded like a person. Continuing, so the ichor, so gods have blood called ichor, and it's the divine blood, but you could depict that in an interesting way with a different color. Could be maybe purple instead of red. That would be interesting. Continuing, for the gods eat not bread, neither drink flaming wine, wherefore they are bloodless. They're called immortals, right? Because they have ichor, they drink and eat ambrosia and nectar and so forth. Here is a part of the Destripando la Historia song about Aphrodite, which actually gives this in the visual. There he is, that's Diomedes cutting her hand. Like I mentioned before, Destripando la Historia uses a more comical style of anime. I'm thinking more of a ghibli serious style. Nevertheless, this gives you the idea. Also, it's neat how they make the deities appear with very interesting hair and skin tones and eye colors. I don't quite imagine something that exaggerated for the serious, grounded anime television series that would depict all these things that are supernatural so vividly and so well, but you can do that. You can do supernatural, really cool, interesting-looking images. Anyway, let's get back to Aphrodite having been lacerated by Diomedes. Aphrodite then, with a loud cry, let fall her son, and Phoebus Apollo took him in his arms. So Apollo is there. Apollo, she's coming out of somewhere and picking up Aeneas and helping him, and saved him in a dark cloud, lest any of the Danaans with swift horses might hurl a spear of bronze into his breast and take away his life. So how do you depict that with live action actors? How do you do that well? I don't think live action is the right medium for this thing. Animation, particular Japanese anime, I think is ideal. But over shouted aloud Diomedes with a war cry, "Keep thee away, daughter of Zeus, from war and fighting." He can see her. She's there, and she could be wounded, but she has supernatural powers at the same time, but not enough to protect herself, but enough to protect Aeneas. Is amazing. Suffice it, continuing Diomedes, he says, "Suffice it that not thou beguilest weakling women? But if into battle thou wilt enter, verily methinks thou shalt shudder at the name thereof, if thou hearest it even from afar. So spake he, and she departed frantic, and was sore distressed. And wind-footed Iris, so the rainbow goddess, right, took her and led her forth from out the throng, racked with pain, and her fair flesh was darkened. So again, you can see that this is all these, it's as when you hear this being told, you can imagine all kinds of different ways. If you want to depict it on film, having live action actors, you have to insert a lot of special effects to make this look like it's actually happening as being told. And physical actors may not be the best way. It's got to be animation. But I think I was most dramatically convinced that the Iliad and the Odyssey need to be done in anime when I read, or actually, in fact, I was listening to the audiobook, which is so much better. Listen to the story, listen to the Odyssey and the Iliad being read to you in some fashion, rather than reading it with your eyes if you can, to get that much closer to the experience that is intended for it. But that said, here again is the 1924 translation by A.T. Murray, and this is the Iliad Book 3. This is the fight between Menelaus and Paris. Now, if you've just seen the movie Troy, you only have half of this. And that half is that, well, Menelaus wins, and Paris kind of cowers away, right? And that works fine narratively and for the character of Paris. But it looks like it's Paris's choice to run away. But this is what really happens. Then the son of Atreus, this is Menelaus, drew his silver-studded sword, and raising himself on high, smote the horn of his helmet, of Paris's helmet. But upon it his sword shattered in pieces, 3, aye 4, and fell from his hand. Then the son of Atreus, this is Menelaus, uttered a bitter cry, ah, with a glance at the broad heaven, Father Zeus, then thou is no other god more baleful. Verily I deemed that I have got me vengeance upon Alexander. Alexander is the other name for Paris, by the way. Interesting to know, Alexander or Paris. Alexander for his wickedness. But now is my sword broken in my hands, and forth from my grasp has my spear flown in vain, and I smote him not. So saying, he sprang upon him, upon Paris, upon Alexander, and seized him by the helmet, with its thick crest by horsehair, and whirling him about, began to drag him towards the well-grieved Achaeans. This is depicted pretty well, I think, in the Troy movie, where you see Menelaus, the actor, is bigger and stronger and tougher looking than Orlando Bloom. And so he's able to, kind of pull him around. And so it looks a lot like that, at least this part in the movie. And Paris was choked by the richly bordered strap beneath his soft throat that was drawn tight beneath his chin to hold his helm. And now would Menelaus have dragged him away, and won glory unspeakable, had not Aphrodite, daughter of Zeus, been quick to see and to cost, broken in twain the thong. So in this moment, Aphrodite comes down and cuts it with what tool is not mentioned, but she is able to cut the strap of his helmet so it comes off. As I recall in the movie, it breaks off or something. And is this something that the humans are seeing? Are they able to see that Aphrodite is there or not? It's, how do you, and this is, again, why the depiction of this with a medium like anime could be very helpful going on. And the empty helm came away in Menelaus' strong hand. This he then tossed with a swing into the company of the well-grieved Achaeans, and his trusty comrades gathered it up. But himself he sprang back again, eager to slay his foe with spear and bronze. But him Aphrodite snatched up full easily as a goddess may, and shrouded him in thick mist. Aphrodite is saving Alexander, saving Paris, and set him down in his fragrant vaulted chamber. So we just went from the battlefield to the chamber. And in live action, like, would it look like the Will Smith genie? Like, it would look weird like that? Or would it look... If it were anime, you could have all sorts of interesting visual language that allows you to understand that transition in a way that you can accept as part of the hyper-reality, the hyper-realistic nature of this scene. So he's set down in his chamber. So like Paris, while he was totally losing and was about to die, it wasn't his choice to run away. Aphrodite imposed this. And that is I think that's a very important part of this story. So Aphrodite, what she does is she makes Paris just looking super, super attractive, and as best that she can do, especially after this battle, and very much ready to lie with his wife, Helen. And then she goes to Helen and says, "Hey, Helen, this is now line 390. Come hither. Alexander calleth thee to go to thy home. There is he in his chamber, and on his inlaid couch," couch just means bed, "gleaming with beauty and fair raiment. Thou wouldst not deem that he had come thither from warring with a foe, but rather that he was going to the dance, or sat there as one that had but newly ceased from the dance," which I guess he's just been dancing, and so, little perspiring, looking real good. So spake Aphrodite, and stirred Helen's heart in her breast. And when she marked the beauteous neck of the goddess, her lovely bosom, and her flashing eyes, then amazement seized her. And she spake and addressed her, saying, "Strange goddess, why art thou minded to beguile me thus?" Now this is probably a scene a bit easier to depict as with live action actors, and wouldn't require nearly as much in the realm of supernatural kind of special effects. And I just want to read the rest of it because I like this scene. "Verily thou wilt lead me yet further on to one of the well-peopled cities of Phrygia or lovely Maeonia, if there too there be one of mortal men who is dear to thee, seeing that now Menelaus hath conquered goodly Alexander, and is minded to lead hateful me to his home. It is for this cause that thou art now come hither with guileful thought. Go thou and sit by his side, and depart from the way of the gods. Neither let thy feet any more bear thee back to Olympus, but ever be thou troubled for him, and guard him until he make thee his wife, and happily his slave." So Helen, whether it's not clear, as I recall in the epics, how much she wanted to go with Paris. You could depict it as her preferring and falling in love with Paris, or just making a bad decision, or having been totally captured and going against her will. And there have been different interpretations of this through the millennia. But at least in this moment, she clearly resents Aphrodite for getting her into this. And she's talking back at her, a goddess, saying, you go be Paris's wife or slave. Ooh. And then Helen continues saying, "But thither will I not go. It were a shameful thing to ray that man's couch. All the women of Troy will blame me hereafter, and I have measureless griefs at heart." Then stirred to wrath, fair Aphrodite spake to her, "Provoke me not, rash woman, lest I wax wroth, and desert thee, and hate thee, even as I now love thee wondrously." Now think about that. Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty and love and such, is the literal manifestation of all of beauty, of all of attractiveness, of all of love and affection. And so Helen exists as she does, who is one of the most beautiful and charming of all beings ever, and I guess he's the most at this time in these mythological legendary history, right? So because of that means if Aphrodite abandons her, it would mean the end of all of those things that she, in theory, is or would cherish, right? So provoke me not, because I brought you in this world and I could take you out. So that's what she says. So then Helen just kind of like hears that, understands, and gets up and goes to the room. Aphrodite guides her there. And then Aphrodite kind of becomes invisible again. It's not said explicitly, but she's kind of there. She sets things up. She has like a chair next to the bed where Paris is, a really pretty chair, everything really, really nice. And she's like doing these things in this supernatural, magical way, but isn't seen anymore by either character, even though that she's still there as a presence. But she, of course, Helen went not willingly. And so she says to Paris, "Thou hast come back from war would thou hadst perished there, vanquished by a valiant man that was my former lord. I wish you were dead, is what she says to him. Verily it was thy boast aforetime that thou wast a better man than Menelaus, dear to Ares, in the might of thy hands with thy spear. But go now, challenge Menelaus dear to Ares again to do battle with thee, man to man. But nay, I have myself bid thee refrain, and not war against fair-haired Menelaus, nor fight with him in thy folly, lest haply thou be vanquished anon by his spear. Paris says, hey, go easy on me. Anyway, and so they do lie together finally, but it's all so uncomfortable and awkward and unpleasant, and the ugliness of this war, but also the supernatural event of Aphrodite taking away Paris. Did anybody see that? She became visible and manifest later, obviously, to Helen, because Helen, as we heard, literally saw her and what she looked like and was able to communicate with her as two people would. But did he see Aphrodite whisk away Paris from the battlefield? Later, Menelaus is looking, trying to find Paris, because as far as anybody could tell, no one saw where he went. It wasn't like we could see him flying through the sky, being carried up to the tower. And so it says, but if the son Atreus ranged through the throng like a wild beast. And oh yeah, this is a big problem with the movie Troy. Not only does Hector not kill Menelaus, but Menelaus survives, and he and Helen go back to Sparta together to then later meet Telemachus in the Odyssey. So if you've only seen Troy, you have a kind of a warped idea of what happens to these characters in the end. And he keeps asking, where is, nobody saw where he went. So this is just, it shows that the supernatural in the Iliad and the Odyssey are essential. Trying to make these grounded or realistic and have it be the same story is definitely impossible. And while Troy was an attempt to do that, I don't think it really succeeded very well. Not for me, for someone who really likes the original literature. In a similar vein, back in the 90s, there was a lovely renaissance, I think, putting Shakespeare on film. And two Hamlets came out. One was with Mel Gibson, and another was with Kenneth Branagh. And I really love the latter. What's different is that the former is put in a setting that's a little bit more historically in the right time period, perhaps, whereas the latter is in a later sort of version of a Danish kingdom. But the biggest difference is the adherence to the text. Virtually every line of the original Hamlet is in Kenneth Branagh's movie, and it's 4 hours long. Whereas, the Mel Gibson one's just a couple of hours. And I remember my parents really liking the Mel Gibson one. I mean, Mel Gibson was very popular at the time, and had a great cast. They both had pretty good casts, I think. But, it's also, you could just get in and get out. You can enjoy the film, or you can see it quick at home and then move on to other things. But for someone like me who really appreciates the word of the author and isn't a fan of abridging anything, especially if it's such an important or old or ancient work, it's that much more enjoyable to me to have all of it there. So we've already seen that the Iliad, with all of its supernatural events and weird mixing of humans and gods, requires the anime treatment. And the Odyssey, all the more so. And I think, especially of just book one, that's all about Telemachus. And in fact, in the beginning, Athena is persuading Zeus on Olympus, saying, I have to go down there and help. And what she does is she actually goes to Ithaca in the form of someone who is known to be a friend of Odysseus and therefore a friend of the family, and comes and greets Telemachus. But Telemachus, seeing Athena, and in the lines, it's very specifically, Athena shook Telemachus' hand. Athena sits there and is talking with Telemachus, but Telemachus only sees this guy. And what will be so interesting in a future anime version of the Odyssey will be the really creative way you can depict that, where you can have the image of the strong Greek shoulder, and then occasionally at different views perhaps, we can see Athena literally underneath as if she's kind of wearing this person like a mask. And that would just be fantastic. And you could hear, the mix of her voice with the voice of this man, and that would be really interesting. And it's just so hard to do that in live action and take it seriously. But anime can get away with that. So for any anime film companies, listen up, because this is what you should do. The Iliad has 24 books, or rhapsodies. And each one, if it's as an audiobook, it's about a half hour. Some of them are longer on the side of 50 minutes, but they run between 20 and 55 minutes each one, which is just about the length that you can do for an episode of a TV series, right? And 24 is a little on the long side now. Now they just do 10 episode seasons, but this is a big thing. You're only going to do maybe one long season of 24 episodes. That's what it should be. Every book should be its own episode, and you should air them with like a week in between each of them, and so they go for 24 weeks for the Iliad. We're going to do the Iliad, we're going to do the Odyssey in the same way. So what you do is you have a narrator. This is how you should begin. You should begin it. Imagine anime, and we're in Chios. That is where Homer's from. And look, and we see, a crowd gathering. We see some people have just learned how to write. And they have some, writing implements, maybe wax tablets or something that would be historically appropriate for the time, 8th, 7th century BC. And we see Homer. We don't see here any words yet, by the way. Not a single word is going to be in this. That's not in the Iliad. And we see this old man, and he's blind. And, of course, the anime will make him look just like that famous statue of Homer. And then he's walking, and he's got a staff. He can't see. He's blind, so he's led by some people, maybe some friends, that come and sit down in a nice little chair there. And it could be day, it could be evening with fire, torches or whatever looks good and is historically appropriate. Because what should absolutely be done is a high attention to detail. What does anime do better than that? In the visual element of this. So so we're 6th, 7th century BC for Homer. There he is, and everyone, we maybe hear just people breathing or gasp. Oh, we don't hear any words. Then he begins, and he begins with right from the beginning of the Iliad, the beginning of what we consider to be the beginning of Western literature, and sing, O goddess, the wrath of Achilles, and every single line needs to be in this. No editing, no cutting, no removing anything. A textual originalism is what I'm after. So you get every single line of it recited, and Homer himself is narrating it. You get someone who would have a voice that sounds mature, but maybe not too old or gravelly, but is distinct, so to stand out. Because guess what? As we see everything depicted that Homer is singing about, we're going to see it depicted visually in this, high anime style. But we're going to hear his voice the whole time, except when some of his characters are speaking. Whenever those characters are speaking, instead of the narrator, it will be a different voice actor doing, Athena or Zeus or Agamemnon or Achilles or whoever it is. That's how it'll go. So they do that all the way through. So all of book 1, every line is there. Now, if it's an anime studio doing this, I imagine it will be in Japanese. Fantastic, because don't worry, we'll dub it. We'll dub it in all the languages of the world, and especially in ancient Greek. So this is, by the way, if you want to do this in ancient Greek first, let me know. I can get a team together of voice actors, and we can do this. This would be fantastic. I would love to do that. But if not, that's okay. You can just do it first in Japanese, and we'll do our own fan dubs later in ancient Greek. We can do that later. Doesn't this sound great, by the way? Does this sound awesome? Wouldn't you love that? The Iliad, and then later the Odyssey. That's season 2 of this. And you have 24 of these episodes, each between 20 and 50 minutes. Every single line is in there, and we see everything depicted in beautiful, exquisite detail. If 24 episodes is too long, then make this a 4-year project. Maybe that's better. Have 12 books be the first season of the Iliad, and then the other 12 books the second season. Or something else. You divide into 6 or some other number that maybe you do 8, then you get 3 seasons, whatever. But every single line needs to be in there in some language that then can be dubbed into other languages, especially ancient Greek, by people like us. And then you do the exact same thing with the Odyssey. That's how the Odyssey should be. It should be 24 episodes. Every line is there, and we have Homer right there doing that every time. Would this be great? Hey, if you want a consultant, anime companies, I'm right there. Like I said, and get a team together of historians, so we get everything that is historically important in the visuals and in other aspects of this depiction. So this is what we should do. This is how the Iliad and the Odyssey should be done on film. In fact, I think it is literally the only way to do it. And while I'm hopeful that the Christopher Nolan Odyssey will be a good film, the limitations of a film in such a short time period make it nearly impossible. I want to have every line. I want to have every story, every adventure, everything that happens, every line between the suitors and Penelope and every other character. That needs to be in there. That's what I want. I don't want the abridged version or reinterpretation. Well, I mean, I won't mind it. In fact, if you're looking for a really good film depiction on YouTube for free is the entire NBC 1997 TV movie, The Odyssey. I highly recommend it because you get a really good idea of what The Odyssey is about. And instead of listening to the audiobook, that's also a really good way to enjoy The Odyssey. But we'll see. Thanks so much for listening and watching, and thanks especially to each and every one of my Patreon supporters, and a special thanks to Ancient Language Institute. Eroste.